What a great setup Gary gave us for this next session. My takeaway from that is that we have an opportunity to create a legacy of change. Change that creates not just a new normal, but a better normal. I'm Heidi Lawrenson, and I lead marketing at Excella. I'm thrilled to see, so to speak, so many of you again here in our virtual gathering place known as Accelerate 2020. Creating a legacy of change is our next guest's modus operandi. Kimberly Nelson is the Executive Director of State and Local Government Solutions for Microsoft. Those solutions being Health and Human Services, Justice and Public Safety, and Modern Government. After 26 years in the public sector herself, like you, Kim joined Microsoft in 2006, which was at the time for a newly created position as Executive Director for at the time, e-government. In this role, she works with government CIOs and other leaders to build long-term strategies for more efficient and cost-effective online services. Her role also includes an extensive collaboration with Microsoft's vast partner ecosystem, of which Excella is proud to be a part as a gold partner. In these partnerships, Kim drives solutions that ensure the predictable delivery of improved online services while helping to reduce the cost, risk, and deployment time, all super critical today, even more so. Prior to joining Microsoft, 22 of her 26 years in the public sector was with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in staff, management, and executive roles, and 4 with the United States Environmental Protection Agency, where she served as the Assistant Administrator for Environmental Information and the Chief Information Officer. And I know she's very proud that the EPA is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. So Kim, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Heidi. It's a pleasure to be here in a virtual sense.
Right. I really look forward to our dialogue. So I'm going to start with a personal question. So how has 2020 been going for you?
Well, Heidi, like everybody watching today, 2020 did not turn out the way I thought it was going to turn out. I think I had the first inkling that the year would be different when on February 29th, I received a call telling me that the trip I was supposed to take, a 2-week trip to India, was being canceled because of something called the novel coronavirus. You know, back then, we all thought, well, okay, this will be over by summer, maybe fall. Things will get back to normal.
Such quaint thinking, wasn't it?
Ah, really? Well, this very week, on 10/10/2020, another very special date in my family, my daughter was supposed to get married. Guess what? That's not happening.
Yeah.
So who would have thought we couldn't hold a wedding, that a wedding would not be a safe thing to do? So it's not quite the year I planned, but it's certainly been a fascinating year.
That's for sure. And it's definitely not what anyone has planned for. But what's amazed me in this year, though, and I've really felt grateful being in the government technology space, is the resiliency that so many people have shown at the personal and professional level within government. What are you seeing with government?
You know, Heidi, if we were to turn the clock back, right, to last year's conference, and you had someone on stage predict that in less than 6 months, we'd be living in a world where the schools, government offices, public places, businesses would be closed for months at a time, I doubt anybody in the office would have believed it.
Yeah,
And I'm going to
absolutely.
date myself a little bit when I think back on this year, but I worked in government, as you indicated, for almost 40 years in government or with government leaders. And I have to say, I've been amazed at what I've seen government do in the last 7 months in terms of their responsiveness to the conditions we're seeing and their agility. It's really been very surprising to me. You know, we've seen countless examples of government agencies changing the way they did business to respond to what has happened in this past year. And Acella has actually been a partner in many of those changes that we've seen and many of the innovations. Without some of the work that you've been able to bring to the table, we simply would not have been able to continue the continuity of government that we've seen. So let me give you a few examples. Virtual inspections and permitting, I think, are a good example. So Acela, I know, helped Manatee County automate more than 3,500 inspections a week and process over 3,000 permits in a month, all while working remotely. You also helped create and manage a tool that helped to manage and schedule health professionals and volunteers to assist with a surge in patients and to supplement hospital capacity, or to schedule volunteers to perform traditional tasks like delivering meals or performing wellness checks, but also to do new things like managing traffic at testing facilities, COVID testing facilities. And as the economy started to rebound a little bit and businesses started to open, restaurants needed new kinds of permits, actually
Exactly.
outdoor permits. And I know you worked with the city of Louisville very quickly to adopt the permitting systems so those permits could be issued to begin restaurant openings.
Yeah, it's Acela's own pivot. It was amazing internally. As you can imagine, our employees just really care so much about our customers, and within weeks had those solutions available. But where we really were just all pinching ourselves was to see the short amount of time that our customers got all of these solutions up and running. Yep. San Diego is another one that pops to mind. So the question now is, where do we go from here? There's still so much that's still really so uncertain.
Yeah, well, as we know, we can't predict the future, right? We don't know what the future will hold. But there are some things we do know, and we do know this. State revenues will decline for the first time since the Great Recession, with the worst still to come. So there's a lot of data that's been documented by the National Association of State Budget Officers. So states have already seen their general revenue decline by about 3% compared to collections from last year. And this is really all due to the COVID pandemic. So looking to the future and facing even more severe losses, many of the governors have already directed agencies to develop budget reduction plans by as much as 15% or 20% for both this fiscal year 21, and going into fiscal year 22. So what does this mean? It's when we look to the future, we know our governments are going to be stretched. It's going to be difficult. Mm-hmm. We went through this once before, right? When we went through the Great Recession in 2008, we knew that it was going to take a while to recover. And in fact, it did. It took 2 to 4 years for many government agencies to actually recover from that recession. And that's going to happen again. So the current predictions are now coming out of NASPO and many of the governors are that they will see revenue losses greater than we actually saw in 2008. And those revenue losses could be as much or more than 20%. Mm-hmm. So as we look and we see these revenue losses, we can't take this lightly. State governments are major economic drivers in this country. Mm-hmm. They represent about 15% of the gross domestic product in the United States. So we really have to think seriously about the implications of these reductions, and then how we're going to continue to provide government services in this environment.
Yeah, and that's it's very sobering, and clearly why you chose the title of the speech that you did today. This is definitely the task at hand for government, to take the limited resources that they have and try to sustain the levels of service. I know everyone is pining to get back to normal. What do you think? Is that possible?
Well, we have to be realistic, right? We've got these global economic factors that will force us to think and act differently, but we also still have the global pandemic we have to deal with. So things are never going to go back to normal. Mm-hmm. I came across recently, as we're doing a lot of this work, a quote by Richard Branson, where he predicted in 30 years' time, as technology moves forward even further, people are going to look back and wonder why offices ever existed. Now, a statement like that really isn't a surprise in today's world, where over 80% of our workforce has been teleworking in some capacity for the last year. What's surprising is that Branson made this statement back in 2013. So I say that because even without the pandemic, change would have happened. In
Right.
many respects, the pandemic just accelerated that change.
Mm-hmm.
So what we've learned, I think, is governments can be agile. They can adopt technology quickly, sometimes in months or instead of years, weeks instead of months. And you noted that, right? You made that reference to some of your customers where you saw that happen. And they can provide even more services more efficiently using technology. So this year, while it forced us to deal with some really difficult issues, I think it's been a great learning experience. I think in many respects, working remotely has its advantages. It can
Yeah,
save time, right? We can reduce traffic. It saves money. We can help even attract and retain some employees. And particularly when you look at the next generation of workers, they're looking for that kind of flexibility. So ultimately, our circumstances we're in right now and in the future will always force us to look for efficiencies. But these efficiencies, I believe, can also result in more effective service delivery.
so we really do have to think differently, and I know that's a key theme throughout this conference. How are you thinking about it at Microsoft, and what is your guidance to government specifically?
So when we were dealing with the whole COVID situation, and we came up with a concept of respond, rebound, reimagine.
Mm.
And originally, when we were thinking this through, we looked at it as sort of a linear process, right? Responding to the epidemic, rebounding from it, and then reimagining government. But what you're going to see is this is really more of a cyclical issue because we're always going to have circumstances that we have to respond to. We're always going to have circumstances that we have to rebound from, right? And we should always be reimagining government. So it's not a linear process. It really is more of a cyclical process. And we're going to be faced with issues, whether they're economic downturns, whether they're natural disasters. We had Hurricane Sandy that really had an impact in New Jersey a few years ago and forced the relocation of some communities. Houston had a 1,000-year flood that really drove them to think differently about their resiliency and sustainability. And more recently, we've seen these terrible, terrible wildfires on the West
Yeah.
Coast. So we're always going to have issues that we'll have to deal with. But we owe it to the public to be as responsive, to be as resilient as possible, and to always focus on sort of the longer term reimagining phase of government.
Yeah, and the pace of change is accelerating exponentially, and technology in particular, and that's all of our worlds. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so technology is changing so, as you said, dramatically, and it's really fueling a widespread disruption in all aspects of our lives. We see it not only, the way we work, but the way we live our lives, the way our children are going to school. But this disruption, the thing about the disruption is it's one of the reasons why there's really a wealth of possibilities as we think about how we reimagine government.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at some of the numbers that are on this particular slide, I think these are really quite amazing if you just sort of absorb some of these. So you take artificial intelligence. The number of companies that are working on artificial intelligence, startup companies, has increased over 1,400% since 2000. The world will spend $6 trillion on cybersecurity by next year. And 83% of enterprise workloads will be in the cloud by the end of this year, 2020. Mm-hmm. So, these, you just imagine, how our world has changed and how these technologies are driving change. So whether it's people having to find new careers, and having to reskill, to embrace the digital skills that are going to be necessary to work in this kind of environment. The possibilities are really endless for governments as they look at how they're going to use these technologies.
Yeah, so the technologies, what I love observing is that they're becoming more and more accessible and ubiquitous for everyone, citizens, businesses, et cetera, more than ever.
They are. And this is actually one of the reasons we at Microsoft, and our CEO, Satya Nadella, has coined a phrase around tech intensity. So technology, and what tech intensity means is technology is no longer the responsibility of just the IT department or a software company. In fact, every organization will need to build and embrace their own digital capability. Technology will have to be at the center of everything we do, and all of us, regardless of where we work, have to embrace that notion of tech intensity. And what's happening, and the reason tech intensity is so possible today is because these technologies that are disrupting the world we live in are actually also democratizing our access to these technologies. So for instance, again, look at some of these statistics here. Drones today cost 1% of what they cost in 2007. So the fact that any government agency today can afford to buy and operate a drone for perhaps to support inspection activities for bridges or dams or construction sites is really significant. Look at the cost of sensors, less than 1% of their cost in 2007. These sensors can support what we call computing at the edge, and they enable government agencies to collect information and analyze data and provide the opportunity to have real actionable insights that they can use to maybe reduce traffic congestion, protect the environment, protect public safety in real time like never before. And then something like cloud-based services. You know, we've been talking about the cloud for a long time. What's the big deal about cloud-based services? Well, one of the things I would say is, when you look at the number of services that are available in the cloud, is they're really supporting critical information sharing and supporting access to information in real time. I mentioned earlier that we're seeing these terrible wildfires in the West. So a company like Cella has a fire solution that enables the collaboration between fire departments, the agencies that issue buildings, not just within a community, a city or a county, but across those cities and counties. And the reason this is important is because we know disasters like wildfires, they don't stop at organizational lines, they don't stop at geographic lines. So we need people on the front line to be able to receive information faster, more accurate information in order to do their jobs.
Yeah, as you say, digital transformation has really been a buzzword for so long now, and it's really at the point now where 2020 has proven that government cannot just be on this journey of the amorphous digital transformation, but actually digitally execute. But I know it's a challenge for many in our audience. So I'd love to hear from you what you see as the keys for government to continue this journey. And not just for the journey's sake, but for the outcomes.
I think you mentioned that word outcome, and I think that's really, really, really important. So I would say there are 4 things to keep in mind as we're looking to drive real impact here. One is focus on the mission of the agency. What's the most important programmatic outcome you're seeking? It's not about process, it's about your mission. The second is put the person you're serving at the center of all your thinking. Think about whatever changes you're making, what does it mean to the person at the center?
Human-centered design.
Absolutely, absolutely. Then the other is you need to plan, right? We all know if you don't plan, it's hard to execute, but we need to act, and we need to act quickly. We saw this year things that used to take months are being done in weeks. Things that used to take years are being done in months. So plan, but act. And then lastly, I would say balance both your short and your longer term needs. We want to reimagine government, but we need to start making changes sooner rather than later.
Right, kind of a mode of action there. Thank you so much, Kim. Our time is coming to an end. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
I would simply say, be bold and make it great.
What a great way to end it. Thank you again very much, Kim, for joining us. And to all in the audience, enjoy the rest of Accelerate 2020.
Thank you, Heidi, for having me.
I am Rob Ronenberg. I'm the Office Services Coordinator with the City of Rochester, Minnesota in the Building Safety Department. How is COVID-19 changing the way that we in Rochester, Minnesota handle our business? And a big one is we are looking more digital. It has been an interesting year. There's been a lot of change, a lot of adapting that we've had to do for how we work with our customers. There were, of course, the initial shutdowns where we couldn't be doing inspections. We couldn't have people in the office and doing things. In 2020, we were up around 67% of our trade permits coming online. And then COVID hit, and it forced us to adapt. What we saw was an increase in those electronic submissions, so our trade permits could still come in, people could still apply for them online, and we hit 91% of those submissions online in June, rather than people mailing stuff in or emailing it or doing it a different way. Since June, the last few months here, we've been around 90% of our submissions coming in online for those trade permits. COVID's been a mess, like it has for everyone, I'm sure, but for us working with Excella and some of the Excella partner systems out there, it has been a good time to move forward and continue to evolve as we need to better support our staff and our customers.